Good evening. I'd like to call our regular council meeting on Monday, May 13th to order at 6 p.m. Good evening and welcome to members of the public in attendance in the council chamber and to those who may be watching the meeting online. I'm Mayor McNeil Smith. To my far left is Councillor Novick, Councillor O'Keefe, Councillor Rintoul, Councillor Gurnett, Councillor Duncan and Councillor Duck. Good evening and thank you to staff here at the meeting this evening. And next, we want to respectfully acknowledge that the land on which we gather for this meeting is the traditional territory of the Wisanish people, which includes the Sault Nation, the Sartlip Nation, the Pakwachin Nation, the Sycam Nation, and the Malahat Nation. In turning to approval of the agenda, we have no additional items to receive onto the agenda this evening, but we have one change. And I would like to have us move item 6A, which is the Bank of Montreal Development Variance Permit, and to after their presentation under 4D1. And so with that, Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you, Mayor. Could I suggest that we move 13D following public participation?
Yes, thank you. I do see members here this evening, and we can do that. So that's the Torque Master's request. We'll be moving until after public participation.
Thank you.
With those two amendments, if we could have a mover and seconder be approved. Moved by Councillor Rintoul, seconded by Councillor Duck. All in favor? The motion carries. Thank you. And in turning to public participation this evening, we'll have two opportunities for members of the public to speak. The first will be our regular public participation period, which we'll have in just a moment. And the second is we have a presentation this evening from the Bank of Montreal on a sign variance request. And as per our council procedures and engagement, we allow public participation opportunity after the applicant's presentation in case members of the public have any questions or comments they wish to make. So public participation is our opportunity for members of the public to come forward to the podium to address council on an item on tonight's agenda or another municipal matter. After I invite speakers to come forward, we ask that you give your name, the municipality you reside in, and if you're representing a group or an organization, and you'll have a maximum of 4 minutes to speak, which provides fairness to all speakers. So for first time, I'll ask if there's anyone wishing to come forward to address council this evening. I'll call for a second time. I'll call for a third time, and seeing no speakers, we'll close the first public participation period. And as per the amendment on our agenda, we'll go first to item 13D, which is the Torque Masters car show event. We have a report from staff, and I'll turn to staff for an introduction, please. Good evening, Mr. Demare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report brings forward the Torque Masters' request to hold their annual car show in Sydney on Sunday, August 4th of this year. The car show has been hosted in Sydney since 2012. The event requires the closure of Beacon Avenue east of 5th Street, as well as a number of adjoining side streets and parking lot C. The event requires council's approval on the road closures and use of amplification for the event. The Torque Masters, in conjunction with Beacon Brewing, is also requesting council approval to hold a beer garden within the hours of 11 a.m. to 2:30 p.m. on 3rd Street as part of the car show. Torque Masters is also requesting closure of 3rd Street between Beacon and Sydney Avenue on Saturday, August 3rd between 3 p.m. and 9 p.m. to hold a mini car show as a fundraising event for the Sydney Lions Food Bank. This event is also coordinated with Beacon Brewing's approval to hold a food truck on that day. This event requires council approval on the road closures and the use of amplification for the event. Recommendations supporting the approval of both events, including a number of conditions, are provided in the report. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I'll turn to colleagues. Councillor Gurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. Through your staff. It's not one of the recommendations, but I go down every year to attend the event. And what I did notice last year, and I did actually speak with Chief Mickelson when I was there because I saw him, the last bottom part where the roundabout is at Seaport and First, and then there's a section of the car show that stretches to the wharf. I know that they're in attendance tonight, and wonder if it's possible that we can have somebody to marshal or to guide people onto the sidewalk, because what I was noticing is that people were just walking through the roundabout, and some cars were in there and having to slam on their brakes because they're looking for pedestrians in crosswalks, not in the middle of the road. And it's just something as simple as maybe even a sign just says, hey, you need to go over to the crosswalk, just for a safety perspective. I would
I'll turn to
appreciate that.
staff first for
Yeah.
a response.
Through the mayor, to Councillor Garnett, yeah, I think that's a very good idea as well. We do meet with the organizer in advance of the meeting, and that's something we can certainly bring up and
Right.
look at having
Great.
some arrangements made.
Thanks very much. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further questions? Seeing none. Sorry, Councillor Duff?
Yes, through you to staff again. I'm just reading through the document. I don't see any, with the closure of Beacon, or third between Beacon and Sydney, is there any acknowledgement to the residents in either the buildings on the side of third in that respect? Thank you.
Through the through the mayor to Councillor Duck, that is something that they arrange to make notification to those residents, because as it's being built up. And they also make arrangements if residents need to come and go from that building, that they get them in and out safely.
Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further questions, I'd ask a councillor to read the recommendations as is in the agenda. It's of course a longer recommendation than the staff report, but we appreciate staff has condensed, as it were, the motion on the agenda to include reference to those other parts on the agenda. Councillor Duck.
The recommendation is, and I so move, that number one, the Torque Masters Car Club, the club be authorized to use sound amplification and to close the following streets and public parking lots: Beacon Avenue 5th to 1st Street, Beacon Avenue 1st Street to Beacon Wharf, 4th Street from Sydney Avenue to Bevan Avenue, 3rd Street from Sydney Avenue to Bevan Avenue, 2nd Street from Beacon Avenue to Bevan Avenue, and if needed, public parking lot C at 4th Street and Sydney Avenue from 5 a.m. to 4 p.m. on Sunday, August 4th, 2024, to accommodate the vehicles for their car show event and subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff report. 2, that the club, in conjunction with Beacon Brewing, be permitted to hold the proposed beer garden August 4th, 2024 on the street fronting 9829 3rd Street, subject to the conditions as outlined in the staff report. And 3, that the Torque Masters Car Club, the club, be authorized to use sound amplification and to close 3rd Street from Beacon Avenue to Sydney Avenue from 3 p.m. to 9 p.m. on Saturday, August 3rd, 2024, to accommodate vehicles for a mini car show and fundraising event for the Sydney Lions Food Bank, subject to the conditions outlined in the staff report.
We have it moved
Second.
and we have it seconded. Any discussion? I'll turn to the mover. Seconder. I just want, while we have leadership and members of Torque Masters here, thank you very much again for this long-time event in our community. It seems to grow a little bit from year to year, and certainly appreciate, on behalf of the community, the additional fundraising opportunities that you're bringing to the event this year, and hope the weather's as good as last year, and I know it'll be a big show, so thank you very much. With that, I'll call the question. All in favor? And the motion carries unanimous. Thank you. You're certainly welcome to stay if you'd like for the rest of the meeting, but given how it is out there, perhaps you have some cars you'd like to be with. So that concludes that item, and we'll just break here for a moment. Have a great evening. Thank you. And thanks, Councillor Rintoul, for bringing that forward on the agenda. So we're now turning to item 4D, 1, which is Development Variance Permit Application number DV100356, the Bank of Montreal at 2461 Beacon Avenue to permit more than one fascia sign per building face, 2 fascia signs that exceed the maximum vertical dimension, and 1 fascia sign to be located less than the minimum permitted distance from the ground. We have a presentation from a representative, Sarah Silva from Zip Signs Limited, participating via Zoom. If we could confirm if you can connect, Ms. Silva.
Hello. I'm sorry, do you see?
Did you want to connect your, oh, there we are.
There we go. Hi, thanks for having me in tonight, and thank you for reviewing the application that we have sent in. We at Zip Signs and BMO have all looked at the comments that council has sent to us, and we agree to reduce the size of the two signs to meet the vertical maximum dimensions and therefore meet everything that the council would like us to do for allowing all of these signs on the property.
Well, thank you very much. I'll turn to any colleagues. Thank you for that information, and that's helpful. I'll turn to any colleagues if by chance there is any questions. We certainly received a full staff report, so. Not seeing any, we'll go from the presentation to the public participation opportunity, and I'll turn to our one member in the gallery if there are any comments on the applicant this evening. Not seeing any, I'll turn to council if there are any questions of the applicant. Sorry, I did that already. So we'll bring the presentation to a close. If you'd like to stay online, Ms. Silva, we're now going to go next to the application itself and make a recommendation. So thank you. With that, council, we're turning to item 6A. I won't repeat the application information, and we do have a recommendation. I would ask that we separate 1 and 2. So if we could have a mover of the first recommendation, Councillor O'Keefe.
If I may ask a question through you to staff.
Sorry,
first,
actually, I'm going to back up a moment
Okay.
here and provide Ms. Verhagen if she would like to give an introduction to the staff report.
Thank you. Good evening. Through the mayor, the applicant is seeking relaxations to to sections of the sign bylaw to allow additional signage on the exterior of the building. The address is in the report there, 2461 Beacon Avenue, the southwest corner of Beacon and 3rd Street. The report describes the additional signs that are proposed. I want to keep the ones that are there and add additional signs so that there'd be 2 per face of the building. As the report says, one of the requests for variances was to increase the vertical dimension permitted of a sign, so make it taller than the bylaw allows. But the applicant has just indicated that they will comply with the sign bylaw in that regard, so that is staff's first recommendation there in the report. Be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Verhagen. I'll turn it back to Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. So it was about, their comment. So just seeking some clarity on that is, so is recommendation number 1 no longer required because they're going to comply with the bylaw anyways? They've already done the redesign.
Through the mayor, recommendation 1 is still staff's recommendation. We have not seen any redesign plans yet.
Oh,
So
okay.
making it a council resolution would give that direction to the applicant, and then we would receive the revised
Okay,
plans.
sure. Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the question. Councillor Garnett.
Thank you, Mayor. So, yeah, I'm a little confused now based on the comments that were provided originally. So we're now looking at variances for what exactly? I guess you don't have the designs, but so I'm if you could just provide a little clarity, that'd be great. Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Through the mayor, so the sign bylaw allows 1 fascia sign per business, per building face. So they want to have 1 sign on the main floor and then another sign on the 2nd story of the same face. So that needs a relaxation to the bylaw or variance to the sign bylaw requirement. They also want to put a sign on the ground floor that's closer to the sidewalk, like lower down to the ground than the bylaw allows.
Right.
So that needs a variance as well.
Okay, thank you. Just want to be sure.
Thanks, Councillor. I'll look to a member to move the first recommendation. Councillor Duncan?
I'm sorry, Councillor
I'm not
O'Keefe had
seeing
her
a
hand
hand,
up. I don't
so-
know if she was moving or asking a question. I can move it.
Please.
Okay. I'll move recommendation 1 that the applicant redesign the proposed signs 2 and 4 to comply with the maximum height of 0.6 meters for a fascia sign.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? We just appreciate that the proponent came forward this evening and indicated what their intent is and why we're moving this. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call Councillor Duck.
Yeah, Council Garnett and I met on the corner to discuss this, and I'm still confused as to why we need that much signage at a corner that mostly pedestrian traffic by there. I understand the street level ones, but I'm not getting a clear understanding why we need second floor additional signage repeating what's already on the first story. If I could get some clarification on that, might help on my decision. Thank you.
I will turn to staff, but basically the applicant has made the request. They've provided their letter of rationale, and staff have spoken to the different requests and which ones they're in support of. and the two that are in this motion that they've requested we amend. So if you would like to make a subsequent motion, we're speaking to these two particular signs, but I'll let you ask the question again, or if staff would like to comment, Ms. Verhagen, or reply.
Sure. Thank you. Through the mayor, the reason that the applicant gives for requesting a variance to have two signs per building face, they say the reason we're requesting a variance is to indicate BMO occupies more than the first story of the building. This BMO location is not just a bank branch, but also contains some office space. So I think they're proposing the sign on the second story to indicate that BMO is not only on the ground floor, they're also upstairs. So that was the reason that was proposed.
Thank you, staff, and through the mayor, if I may. Again, with Councilor Garnett, had a look at the other banks, and they offer similar services and don't have the additional signage. So I'm just looking at visual pollution and wondering why we need so much signage in the town to identify a single business that has more than one operation within it. So I'm not in favor of this development variance permit.
Thank you, Councillor Duck.
Point of order.
Yep.
So we have a motion on the floor.
We have a motion on the floor with regards to two of the signs.
Correct.
Mhm.
And if I could clarify, was Councillor Duck speaking to those signs in particular that you're proposing, you're not supporting this motion because those are the two signs that you would see omitted from the project?
Okay, so I'm taking your point of order, and I'll say to Councillor Duck, your comments and your concerns, I don't think speak specifically to these two signs. The next recommendation, number 2, that owners and tenants, that notice go out, includes all of the requests within the sign, and I think it would be might be more appropriate to speak to it at that time. You can be opposed or not to the redesign of the two signs. That's what the motion is on the floor. Appreciating that your motivation not to support this recommendation was broader than that.
Duly noted. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, so further discussion, Councillor O'Keefe.
Yeah, just on that point, I'm just trying to get some further clarity on that, because when I look at the diagram, my understanding is it is signs 2 and 4 that are on the second floor. And so what I guess the point that I'm taking away from Councillor Duck is, why would we support a motion to ask them
Okay,
to
so-
redesign the sign if we don't agree with those signs going up in the first place?
Okay, Councillor
So-
O'Keefe,
Okay,
Councillor Duck has made his motivation. If he wants to clarify whether he's in support of these signs, the motion is whether or not to require the signs to comply. If you're opposed to that, then you're allowing the signs to not comply. You're allowing the signs, if you vote against that motion, that's what you're agreeing to. You're not speaking to whether or not signs should be on the building or not. That motivation or that discussion can happen under the second recommendation. Again, I'll repeat, the motion is that the applicant redesign the proposed two signs, proposed signs 2 and 4, to comply with the maximum height. If you oppose it, that recommendation, then you're not requiring the signs to be altered. You're actually approving the variance for them.
okay, it seems a little bit backwards.
We'll amend the motion then.
It would seem that we should, first of all, decide
Okay, so
whether,
if you want to state your intention through myself, rather than commenting on another councillor's
okay, no, I'm just trying
motivation.
to understand the process more, so that, would it be more appropriate if we need first to make a decision as to whether we agree to signs going on the second floor? And then it would seem to me that if that motion is carried, then we would looking for them to comply with the correct.
Okay. So I may be restating myself a little bit. I'll try to use a little different language. The first motion is whether or not to provide variances or require them to comply with our sign bylaw. If you're opposed to those, then you're allowing the variances. If you vote in favor, you're allowing them, you're requiring them to be the maximum height. That's all that motion is dealing with. The next motion is completely open in terms of whether you're supportive of any number of signs or the other variances. So no, I don't agree that we should take another approach and another motion. I think this motion is clear, and it doesn't bind a member of council in their comments about any of the signs in a subsequent motion, in the next motion, number 2.
Motion to table?
Second.
Okay? I'll call the question. All in favor of tabling?
Just, before calling the motion, is there any discussion or motivation in regards to the tabling of the motion?
I don't know. I'll turn to staff if you're allowed to motivate on a tabling motion. I don't see any harm in it, so I will turn to the mover and seconder if they wish to motivate. I mean, I've heard motivation already, but please continue.
Thank you, Mayor, and I think I understand the process of this motion, and I thank you for the clarification, because I now understand where it's going, but I think it might be a step before, and I think we could do the recommendation 2 before 1, and 1 may not be necessary depending on the outcome of 2. And so I'm just thinking that rather than try and put in place a motion that for this redesign, it may be putting the cart before the horse and just getting it in place. Thank you.
Turn to the seconder.
Yeah, I agree. It seems that the decision first needs to be made. Are we going to allow signs on the second floor? And so it seems to me.
No, it's whether you're going to allow. There's 8 signs. You can speak to any of the signs. You're starting to motivate for particular signs already, and we're trying to pass a tabling motion.
Okay, I'll leave it at that.
Okay, I'm not supportive of the motion. It doesn't, passing the first motion doesn't bind councillor on the second resolution. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor of tabling? Opposed? The motion's defeated. I'll now call the question on recommendation 1. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor O'Keefe is opposed. The motion carries. I'll now turn if a member of council will read in the second recommendation.
Point of order, I was opposed as well, please.
Councillor Garnett was opposed, and Councillor O'Keefe was opposed. The motion carries. Turn to Councillor Duncan.
Yeah, thank you. I'm also wondering if I should split this one, because there's number of signs and the minimum vertical distance of the ground floor signs, and I'm wondering if different councillors are going to have feelings about that, and if I
Okay,
should split that as
Okay,
well.
so thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'm going to suggest that members of council who have concerns about allowing number of signs bring forward a motion arising, speaking to concerns for the number of signs or specific signs, and then we can go to the motion with regards to notice. I'll turn to staff if there's any comment on the appropriateness of that.
Sorry, to confirm, you were proposing to consider each variance individually?
I've heard from colleagues that there's some concern about the number of signs. So if council members would like to make a motion arising in terms of the number of signs, then we can then speak to the variances. We've spoken to one of the variances. There are two of the variances. The variance on 2 signs.
So there's 3 variances proposed to the sign bylaw.
Mm-hmm.
One is to vary the requirements for the number of fascia signs permitted on one building face.
Right.
In several different building faces. The second variance is to relax the minimum vertical dimension from the ground for a fascia sign. And the third variance would be to allow 2 fascia signs to be taller than is permitted, like relaxing that vertical maximum height. So.
Okay, and staff are recommending.
So the way the staff recommendation number 2 is written, that recommendation does not include the third variance request about relaxing the maximum permitted height, because the first staff recommendation was to not do that.
And we passed that motion.
No, I'm sorry, I will clarify. As Ms. Verhagen said, there are 3 variances requested. The first one was the one the proponent has already said they intended to do anyway. We just moved that separately. Point 2, which is being moved as one recommendation, includes 2 variances, some of which some council members have spoken about, which is the number of signs. And the third variance was, of course, the height from the ground, which nobody has spoken to. This is why I'm saying that the height from the ground, a number of signs, may perhaps be split from point 2, because one of those may be contentious and the other may not be.
So, my suggestion, or my recommendation, Councillor Duncan, is that you go forward with, if you're wishing to move a partial recommendation, I will hear that and vote if it's acceptable, and if I need the input from staff to decide that, then we'll take that route.
Okay. Yeah, I'll move it separately, and then, and I'll move it in order. So, 2, that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters or 246 feet of 2461 Beacon Avenue be notified regarding development variance permit application number DV 100100356 to vary the requirements for the number of fascia signs permitted on one building face.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. I'll turn to the mover and seconder.
I don't have a problem with this. I understand the proponent's rationale that their second story is part of a different service line that's perhaps, I'm not sure if it's public facing or if it's staff only, but it does seem to be different from the other banks that Coast Capital, for example, occupies the second story, but it is part of their public service line, whereas BMO, it was unclear. It seems like it's office space for the bank's operations itself. Either way, the staff's rationale that this would be signs that if it was a different business, there would be signs there anyway. So it's not that we're providing, you know, additional signs per building. It's that we're letting the existing businesses there use up what would be kind of the sign space if it was a different commercial operation. And so I don't see this as being, you know, undue clutter. It's just basically signaling that what could have been the secondary space for a different tenant is occupied. Both sets of spaces are occupied by the same one, and I think that's an okay thing to signal to the business community. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Duncan. I'll turn to the seconder, Councillor Duck, and then to Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, I'm going to not be in favor of this because I don't think there's a need to identify the business. It has different departments within the business, and those are on the second floor, which is accessible through the primary business on the main floor. Much like Coast Capital. Coast Capital does have additional separate services that have office space up there, so there's a fascia sign for that. But it all is BMO services, and banking services are not a differentiation, or financial services. And I think it's is well identified the way it is, or it can be altered. I know they made some changes in the building, so I think it's well advertised and can be further promoted on the inside with directional signs for that upper floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Duck. I'll turn to Councillor Garnett, then to Councillor No.
Thank you, Mayor. And just to be clear, we didn't actually meet there. we ran into each other. It was happen chance. Yeah, no, I don't support it. I do find it excessive. And when I did my walk around to all the other banks, I noted the secondary sign of Coast Capital, but it is a different company name. It means, to me, it's, granted, I've lived here a long time, but I completely understand that the building is all Bank of Montreal. It's all BMO. And I would need secondary signage on the upper floors to let me know that. And I feel like, alluding to what Councillor Duck had mentioned earlier, that you could have signs inside your building as you walk in and go, second floor, this is the services we offer. I can't see anybody looking at that building and saying, you know what, I wonder what's on the second floor. I mean, clearly it's Bank of Montreal. So it just seems excessive to me to have that many extra signs for the building when it's the same company that owns it all and runs all the things inside first or second floor. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I agree with my colleagues. I think the proponent's request is excessive. It's quite obvious looking at the building that it is a BMO building. The architecture is uniform for the first and second floors. It's quite obvious to me anyway, when looking at the building, that the building is a BMO building. I don't see the need for adding an additional BMO sign on the second floor. I might have a different perspective if it was a different business, but notwithstanding that, I fear that if we allow this, there will be a rush of applications to add second floor signage on other buildings. And I think that would create an unpleasant landscape on Beacon Avenue. I think existing signage directing people to the second floor within the bank's premises are sufficient. There's not going to be confusion in the minds of the public in looking at that second floor. I can't imagine how people would be confused unless they got directed to an address and then the address didn't have a sign and they would wonder, am I going to the right place? But that's not the case in this situation. So in spite of the proponent's arguments, I'm not seeing that as something that is beneficial to the community at large. I think we have a sign bylaw for a reason, and that is to protect the visual landscape of our main streets. And in this case, I don't see value. I don't see us bringing anything to the table that would enhance the visual landscape of Beacon and the side streets. So for those reasons, I'm going to vote against this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Novick. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. I also won't support the motion. I think we covered it off, but in my view, I mean, I've dealt with that bank in the past. Never been any confusion to me. I've been up to the second floor. I know what they do on the second floor. I know what goes on the first floor. BMO is one entity. The fact that they have a different business line, that they have certain services upstairs and certain services on the second floor, ground floor and second floor, the rationale that they need to have that identified is, I don't get the rationale, so I won't support the motion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to Councillor Rintoul.
Thank you. I'm sorry for prolonging this. I mean, I agree, everyone's stated, beg your pardon, apologize for perhaps delaying this decision. I just want to go through the chair to staff. Does this motion, assuming it fails, accomplish what we think it's intended to? Meaning, this is designed to remove, I believe, sign 2 and sign 4, which are the second story signs. But there are identified on the applicant's page 8 of 18, 8 signs on this building, the majority of them facing Beacon Avenue. So if this motion passes, how many signs are actually they restricted to of the 8 that appear on the diagram on page 8 of 18 in their submission?
Through the mayor, that is a great question. The motion on the table, sorry.
No.
Do you wish to?
You go ahead. I do have a comment, but I'll let you proceed.
So the motion on the table is about sending notification out. So it's not approving or denying any variances. If the motion fails, then council would have to make some kind of other recommendation and resolution about, do you want to deny the variance that's been requested? By saying you're not going to send out notification, that doesn't deny the variance. It just means we won't send notices. In terms of how many signs this one variance is talking about, there's signage on the building right now. This variance to allow additional signs, if we look on page 1 of the staff report, you can see the bylaw allows 1 fascia sign per establishment per building face. So the north building face would have 3 signs on it. They want to add 2 more signs, 1 on the ground floor and 1 on the second story. The east building face, facing 3rd Street, currently has 1 sign, and they would be adding 1 more sign to it as well.
Well, thank you, Ms. Verhagen. If I could comment. So what I've heard from the speakers is that the two upper story signs, which I understand are signs 2 and 4, are unnecessary. And so I was recommending, prior to recommendation 2, that if a council member wanted to make a motion arising with regards to specific signs not being permitted. So I would suggest to council that we table this motion, and if a councilor would like to make a motion arising to not permit signs, we can ask staff if that motion is appropriate, given our sign bylaw. Councillor Duck,
Move to table?
Second.
any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed to tabling? The motion carries. Sorry? So I will now look to a council member to make a motion arising with regards to signs. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will move that council deny any additional signage for 2461 Beacon Avenue.
Sorry, Councillor Novak, I'm going to ask for more clarity. I think we're speaking of specifically of sign number 2 and number 4.
Well, I will say very simply then that council deny any signage in excess of that which is permitted by the current sign bylaw. And if they want to then modify existing signs, they make a separate application.
Sorry, I'm going to make a comment before taking, and Councillor Novak has the floor. I'm going to turn to staff. Staff have made a comment that even if these 2 signs are moved, we will have more signs per fascia than is permitted in the sign bylaw. So that's why I'm trying to get council to specify the signs that they do not want to permit. Councillor Verhagen, or Ms. Verhagen.
I believe there may have been a misunderstanding. No, the variance that's requested is to allow more than 1 sign per building face. So if that variance is denied, they're allowed 1 sign per building face in a way that complies with the sign bylaw.
So my question through to staff is that if sign number 2 and sign number 4 were denied, would there be more than 1 sign per fascia sign per building face? My understanding is there would. So the motion that Councillor Novak is putting on the floor would disallow other signs besides sign number 2 and 4, which council members have spoken to specifically.
And point of order, it wasn't seconded, so I think if we could move to another motion arising.
Well,
Sorry, I haven't looked for a seconder because I haven't received the clarity in the motion that I think is necessary. Councillor Novak.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I don't really want to motivate at this point, but
I don't want you to, motivation is not necessary.
so the
clarity in what you want to not
Okay.
allow in your motion is what.
So the
I'm
point of my
requesting.
motion was to deny any additional signs, period, in excess of what the current zoning bylaw allows. And that would cover 2, 4, and anything else that
Okay.
is excess of
Okay, I
the
understand.
current zoning bylaw.
So your motion then would disallow more than 2 signs.
Correct.
Thank you. I will look for a seconder. I'm not seeing a seconder. I will turn to Councillor Duck.
Yes, I'm going to propose the motion as follows, that sign bylaw number 2058, which is section 8,
Sorry, we just need reference to
Okay.
signs.
that, which the current bylaw permits 1 fascia sign per establishment per building face, and that's what we allow.
That's
That was the
exactly.
motion, that was the
that's
motion that
exactly
Councillor Novak made.
But that's, yes, okay.
Councillor Gurnett.
I'll move that we deny the variances for sign 2 and 4.
Second.
Not denying the variance, you're denying sign number 2 and 4. Not the variance, the sign.
Correct.
Okay, the motion as I understand it is to deny sign number 2 and sign number 4 in the application. Is that what the
Second.
seconder understood?
Yes.
We haven't moved and seconded. Is there any motivate? Councillor Rentoul?
Thank you. So to clarify, I think this is kind of where we started. There was concern around signs on the 2nd floor, and
Yes.
this motion, if I understand it correctly, would deny the 2 signs that were proposed for the 2nd floor, sign number 2 and 4. Through to staff, did we not already pass a motion suggesting those signs had to be reduced in size? And if so, are we in a position to, move this motion that's currently on the floor?
Through the mayor, perhaps Mr. Humble can clarify whether council passed a resolution denying the request for signs 2 and 4 to exceed the maximum permitted height. Did that resolution happen?
That's correct. Should we rescind that motion?
Yes.
Yeah, I would look to rescind that one, yeah. If you're looking at denying the variance for that, you would have to rescind that motion.
Okay, so I would seek this motion be tabled so we can rescind that motion.
So moved.
Second.
Moved and seconded, all in favor? Opposed? None are opposed, the motion is tabled. I would look for a motion to rescind,
Motion.
number 1.
Motion to rescind recommendation 1.
Second.
Moved and seconded, any discussion? Call the question, all in favor? Opposed? None opposed, the motion carries. I would raise the tabled, most recent tabled motion back to the floor.
So moved.
Well, it's moved and seconded, I'm raising it back to the floor. Is there any further discussion? Okay, I'm in supportive of these 2 signs. Reference has been made to 2-story buildings. We would be hard pressed to find more than 1 or 2 other 2-story buildings with the same business occupying it in downtown Sydney at the moment. So I don't anticipate that this will change the landscape significantly. We have heard from the proponent that the 2nd story is set back on the north side and on the east side, and that these are very simple, relatively small logos. It will allow additional branding, quite frankly, to people who are further. You won't see these signs if you are on the south side of the street, or if you are on the west side of 3rd Street. You will only see these signs if you're farther afield. And to me, it's fairly simple branding. I don't consider it clutter. People aren't going to be looking at all the signs at one time because they're on 3 different sides of the building and at substantially different heights. With that, I'll call, if there's no further discussion, I'll call the question on.
Can we get this motion read back, please?
Yes.
Could you just clarify, is this the first motion that was tabled or the second motion that was tabled?
Second motion that was tabled.
Okay, so that motion is that signs number 2 and 4 be denied.
See no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duncan and myself are opposed. The motion carries. So with that, council, if I can make a comment, is we have the second motion, and we still have to provide notice. We're allowing, sorry, I'm going to turn back to Ms. Verhagen in terms of which variances are left and would be covered in the second motion.
Thank you. I'm just reviewing the staff report here, and I think a variance to relax the minimum distance from the ground for a fascia sign, sign 8, as it's referred to in the staff report, on the north side of the building. That would need a variance, and that sign would also need a variance from the requirement for more than 1 fascia sign per establishment per building face. The north face of the building already has a fascia sign, and if they add sign 8, being the one on the main floor quite low to the ground, it would need a variance to be 2 signs on 1 building face instead of 1. Are there any questions?
Is there anything wrong?
So,
Sorry,
if I
my
may-
understanding is this recommendation would be sufficient if the number 3 was changed to 2.
The mayor, if you're referring to recommendation 2 in the staff report as it's written,
Yes.
it says to vary the requirements for the number of fascia signs permitted on 1 building face and the minimum vertical dimension from the ground for a fascia sign. You could say, in order to allow 1 new fascia sign to be installed, because that's what it would be for, is to allow the 1 new fascia sign on the north side at the ground story level.
Okay, so we changed number 3 to 1.
Yeah.
Okay, so if I could look for a mover to move that recommendation, changing the number 3 to 1. Councillor Duncan?
Sure. I move that owners and tenants in occupation of property within 75 meters, 246 feet of 2461 Beacon Avenue be notified regarding development variance permit application number DV 100100356 to vary the requirements for the number of fascia signs permitted on one building face and the minimum vertical distance from the ground for a fascia sign, in order to allow for one new fascia sign to be installed, and that any written correspondence received be forwarded to council at the time of consideration of approval of the variance.
We have it moved. Do we have a seconder?
A point of order, if I may?
Yes?
I just noticed that 100 is in there twice. Do we need to correct that? Is it supposed to be just once? Yeah, just have the letter, the notice reflect that.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you for catching that, Councillor Gurnett. Do I have a seconder for the motion? Councillor O'Toole seconds. I'll turn to mover and seconder. Any discussion? It's not
No.
required, it's.
I have no discussion.
Okay, Councillor O'Toole?
So clarifying through to staff, if this motion passes, we will go out to public notice, which would accommodate, if I'm looking on page 8 of 18, on the applicant's report, all signs that are requested with the exception of 2 and 4, which have been removed. I just want to make sure we're not missing anything when this notice goes out. That require a variance.
Yes, they're already permitted to have one fascia sign per building face, so this variance, this notice would be to allow the one additional fascia sign on the north side of the ground floor.
Okay, it does appear in this diagram that sign,
Yeah, and it would, and it would also vary the minimum height above the ground. Page 8 for me in the package is an aerial photo with a bunch of little blue arrows. Is that what you're looking at
Correct.
as well?
yeah, which appears to show 2, 3, 4, 5 signs facing Beacon Avenue.
So it shows signs 1, 2, and 8 on the north side of the building.
Okay,
Some of the things there,
so signs
they
6
have
and 7.
the address above the door on the east elevation labeled as sign 7, but that's it says the street address of the building. The sign bylaw wouldn't consider that a sign. That's the address. Sign 3 is the existing fascia sign at the ground story level over the door. Sign 4 is at the second story level, so that would not be part of this variance.
Okay,
Thank you.
thank you.
Thank you, Councillor O'Toole, for the clarification. We'll turn if there is any additional discussion. Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We made our way through that. We're now turning to bylaws. And we're turning on to item 5A1, which is bylaw number 2258, zoning amendment number 43 for 2180 Beacon Avenue West to rezone property from Comprehensive Development Zone 23, CD 23, to Comprehensive Development Zone 43, CD 43, to allow a multi-unit residential development. We have one written submission received, and I'll just note, council, that there is a typo and that we did provide first, second, and third reading at our meeting of April 22nd. And so the recommendation that staff are making is that, and I'm not moving it, I'm just clarifying that the staff recommendation is that with receipt of approval from MODI, the bylaw be adopted. So council, we would be looking to adopt the bylaw if that motion is made. If council members have any questions of procedure, I would ask that they ask those questions now before we have the bylaw on the motion on the floor to adopt. Councillor O'Keefe.
Is there any further discussion or questions after the motion is put on the floor for adoption? Or if we have, so for example, if I wanted to.
So there are questions, so I think
Okay.
I understand your question. So
Okay.
if there are certainly questions we can ask of staff at time of adoption. However, if council may be looking to amend, then we would have to table that motion for adoption. and we would have to rescind third reading and rescind second reading if we are wishing to amend the bylaw. We can speak based on the nature of the amendment, we could speak further into whether there's process with regards to it going back to Modi or not, but that would be the process. So,
Okay.
in light of that comment, before seeking a member of council to to put the motion on the floor to adopt, if there is a question of staff, please ask the question at this time.
Okay. Thank you.
Councillor O'Keefe, you have the floor.
Thank you for that. So no, through you to staff, and just for clarity purposes, because to address the questions that came up in the letter from Mr. Carlson in regards to the noise attenuation. And we did have some email traffic back and forth earlier today, so just for the benefit of people looking at this, I just wanted to clarify with staff through you that my understanding that is that in regards to the noise attenuation, we cannot require noise attenuation measures as a condition of either the rezoning or the development permit. Just wanted to confirm that that's the case.
Thank you. I'll turn to Mr. Humble.
Through the mayor, yeah, the short answer is yes, that's the
Yeah.
view of staff.
Okay, and then also, I know that we did have some discussion at the April 22nd meeting about, there was some discussion that perhaps we could cover that off or make it a condition through the building permit process. But my understanding now is that we can't do that either.
Again, through the mayor, if I may, yeah, that's the belief of staff, that
Okay.
that's our view. We haven't sought a legal opinion, but our view is that we could not make that a condition of the building permit or the issuance of the building permit.
And is that because we should have done that sooner, or that it's something that we wouldn't be able to do anyways, based on the nature of that sort of requirement?
Again, the timing of that wouldn't have mattered.
Okay.
Again, we're talking about an element of the building itself, not of off-site requirements. We're not talking about sound attenuation associated with landscaping. You're talking about building elements which are subject to the BC Building Code. So
Okay.
yeah, there's not a provision that we're aware of that would allow us to make that a condition,
Okay,
Yeah.
okay.
regardless of timing.
Yeah, okay, thank you for the clarification.
Thank you, Councillor O'Keefe. Are there any questions at this time? Please, Councillor Garnett.
I'll move adoption.
Sorry, if you can read the motion.
Okay, fine. Wasn't sure what you wanted. I'll move that bylaw number 2258 zoning amendment.
Sorry, just the recommendation
Just the actual
that
one?
with
Okay.
receipt.
Okay, that with receipt of approval from Modi, the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any further discussion? Or any discussion? Councillor Garnett, the mover.
Yeah, I just want to reiterate the importance of housing in our community and how much we need it, in particular rentals, and an affordability component to this is extremely important for not just people looking for homes, but for our business community and industries that are helping them to retain and attract employees to our area. And I'm hopeful that the proponents are watching the video, and I just want to provide a comment about the residents on John Place, and I'm hoping that they'll be, and I'm sure they'll be good neighbors as far as their construction management plan goes, and not using John Place and interrupting the lives that have been so disrupted so much in the last little while. And also, we've passed noise bylaws in the not too distant past, where we around parameters of days of the week and hours in terms of pile work, and hopefully that won't happen on this particular lot, but if it does, it would be great if they would be so kind as to let the neighbors know ahead of time so they can plan to either be away or be at least aware that it's happening, because that didn't happen on a development on 5th Street, and some neighbors were quite alarmed at the sound. So I'm hopeful if they watch that, they'll take that in consideration. And one last comment I want to make is that a colleague had commented about changing CD 23 to 43 and 2 months in terms of RM7-WS with the zoning bylaw, and I did give thought to that question, and my response would be that 2 months is 2 months, and so if the project goes ahead and finishes 2 months earlier than having to wait 2 months, 1 day is a lot to somebody who's looking for a home, and I think it's important that we provide the opportunity for this to be built in as expeditious a fashion as possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Gurnett. I'll turn to the seconder, Councillor Rintoul. No comment. Is there any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call the question. All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. Thank you, staff. And we are next going to item 5A2, which is Development Permit Application DP 100838 at 2180 Beacon Avenue West to construct a 5-story multi-unit residential building containing 140 apartment units. And council, we did have to pass the zoning bylaw to be able to consider the development permit application, and so I will turn to a member, Councillor Gurnett.
I'll move that the development permit be approved, subject to conditions as per council resolution number 2023.49.569.
Second.
We haven't moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councillor Duck.
Yeah, I will continue to oppose this design of this residential. I fully agree with my colleagues that we need rental housing, but I also think about livability and the proximity to the highway and the noise that this is going to counter. I would continue to encourage the builder and the developer to give some thought to making that a little less and more livable space. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call the question. All in favor? Opposed? Councillor Duck is opposed. The motion carries. Thank you. We're now going to item 5B, which is bylaw number 2272, Financial Plan 2024 to 2028. Council, we gave first, second, and third reading on April 22nd, and we have a motion. Councillor Duck?
Move the recommendation the bylaw be adopted.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. And under 5C, we have bylaw number 2273, 2024 tax rates. We again gave first, second, and third reading at the April 22nd meeting. Councillor Duck?
I move the recommendation the bylaw be adopted.
Second.
Moved and seconded. I see no discussion. All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you, staff. We're now turning to adoption of minutes under number 7, and I would look for a mover and seconder that the minutes of our regular council meeting of April 22nd and the minutes of our special council meeting just to go in camera on May 2nd be approved as presented. Moved by Councillor Duck, seconded by Councillor Novick. Any corrections? Seeing none, all in favor? That motion carries. Thank you. We're now turning to number 10, the Mayor's Report, and the only item I have this evening is the CRD Board highlights from the CRD Board meetings of April the 10th. I hope council members and members of the public find some of that information helpful. I have nothing to highlight further. We don't need a motion to receive. It's just for information. I would turn to colleagues if there are any questions or comments they wish to make. On that, thank you. We have no council reports this evening. We're turning to committee reports. We have one this evening, and that's the Advisory Planning Commission meeting of May the 7th. We're receiving their minutes on our agenda. We don't require a motion, but I will turn to our Councillor Rintoul, our liaison to APC, to comment or remark if he wishes on the minutes.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I will just note for my colleagues and through to staff with respect to the minutes that Councillor Duck was in attendance as well. Thank you, Councillor Duck. With respect to the meeting itself, I think the minutes certainly are descriptive around the record of decision. It was a very positive reception, and I thank the members of the Advisory Planning Commission for attending certainly a long and very detailed meeting. And I thank staff for a very comprehensive presentation of the zoning bylaw and for going through following the presentation section by section and addressing any comments for clarification that came out of APC. I think again the record of decision is fairly indicative of the positive reception overall from APC. There were 2 pieces of correspondence from members who were unable to attend in person, and I understand that those will be circulated along with the feedback from the general public. So not only did the members of the APC receive them and have the opportunity to vet them and speak to them, also council received their specific comments when it comes back to council, I believe, on the 27th of May. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Rintoul. I'll now turn back to you, Councillor Rintoul. There is a recommendation coming out of the meeting.
Yeah, thank you. And what I'll do is I'll move that the APC recommendation of May 7th, 2024 be deferred until the May 27th council meeting, where it can be considered with the staff report summarizing public input.
Second.
It's moved and seconded. Any discussion? Councilor Rintoul?
Yeah, just briefly, I think the observation from APC here, staff received it well as almost a housekeeping item that they had intended to address, but in that council's receiving all of the feedback on the 27th, it just seemed to be perhaps the appropriate venue in which to discuss APC's recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call a question. All in favor? That carries unanimous. Thank you again. And now we're turning to staff reports. We have 7 staff reports this evening. The first, under item 13A, is a tree removal request at 10433 All Bay Road. I'll turn to Ms. Clary, please, for an introduction.
Good evening. This request came from 10433 All Bay Road to remove a western red cedar from the backyard of that property. The property is located within the Roberts Bay or ESA as well. The tree is approximately 3.5 meters away from both adjacent houses, which is outside of the amendment that Council recently made to the tree preservation bylaw. The tree is generally in good health, and the staff haven't been provided any evidence to suggest that it's an imminent hazard, and therefore our recommendation is to deny this application.
Thank you, Ms. Clary. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions of the staff report. Seeing none, we do have a staff recommendation. Turn to Councillor Duck.
Yes, and I so move the recommendation that the request to remove the protected western red cedar from 10433 All Bay Road be denied.
Second.
We have it moved and seconded. I'll turn to the mover and second first.
I have nothing to add. I think that staff did a good research on this and followed up with it. I did go by the tree and it looked in good health, and I don't think it needs to come up. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. I'll turn to the second.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I also visited the site and looked at the tree, and not being an arborist, but it did appear to be in good health, especially relative to all the other trees that I visited over the last 5.5 years. There were some discrepancies, as staff commented too, in the report provided by the arborist that was hired, as opposed to the staff arborist, in terms of distance from properties, which I thought was really odd that there would be. And there were some other things in there. I actually went through this particular arborist report rather closely, and there were some things in here that I thought were a bit odd in terms of the observations, speaking to how they were maximizing green space, and I couldn't understand why that was relevant to the decision to cut down a healthy tree. Also, the comment that the tree had grown to an inappropriate size for location, that one for me was really strange, because looking at the tree, it's obviously decades old and the house is really new, so I would say that maybe the house was the one that was put in the wrong space. But in the end, when I look at trees and how important they are in our community, and just over the last week or so, we've had 5 or 6 boulevard trees that have died that we have to take out, and how much more important it is that we need to keep the ones that on town land and private land alive to help our community thrive, and just how important it is in terms of the overall livability of the community, and the fact that when I look at this, is there an imminent risk to or a hazard to a person or to a home? And staff is recommending that there isn't, and that there was no risk mitigation measures mentioned by the arborist report for the proponent. So I in the end, I can't see a reason why we need to remove it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Any further discussion? Seeing none, I'll call a question. All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. Thank you. And we're turning to item 13B, which is the electric kick scooter pilot project. Very exciting. I will turn to staff for introduction. Ms. Clary, thank you.
Electric kick scooters are currently illegal on BC streets. These include scooters that have 2 or 4 wheels, a platform to stand on, and a handlebar for people. It doesn't include all electric mobility devices, but it's specific to e-kick scooters. The province implemented a pilot project in 2021, and several municipalities participated in that pilot project. It was a little bit onerous for municipalities to participate with respect to creating our own bylaws and also reporting requirements related to the pilot project. But in April 2024, the province launched a new pilot project that made it much easier for municipalities to participate in. This really only requires a council resolution, and then these electric kick scooters would be permitted anywhere a bicycle is permitted on Sydney streets. So staff are supportive of this approach. The province is looking for municipalities to participate so they get as much information as possible before making the decision whether or not these will be approved in the Motor Vehicle Act indefinitely. And many of the other municipalities in the region are already participating in the pilot project, and the Capital Regional District also has interest in municipalities participating because the regional trails obviously travel through multiple municipalities. So there are multiple benefits to the town participating in this, but I'm here to answer any questions if you have any.
Thank you, Ms. Clary. I'll turn to colleagues. Any questions, Councillor O'Toole?
Sorry, I think I missed that part. You did say the CRD are participating, so the multi-use trails would be a part of this undertaking. Is that what I heard?
Through Councillor Rintoul, so the regional trails are not streets, so they would not fall under this Motor Vehicle Act. However, the CRD is amending their bylaws, and they will need to list which municipalities are participating so they can allow them on the multi-use trails in those municipalities.
Okay.
So yes, multi-use trails are not part of the Motor Vehicle Act. They're not subject to the Motor Vehicle Act. Those are streets.
But with this amendment that you're referencing coming to CRD, for example, the Lochside Trail would be included in this pilot? Is that what I've heard?
Sorry for the confusion. So the parts of the Lochside Trail that are on the roads would fall under this. So Lochside Drive, for example, is part of the Lochside Trail. So by Sydney adopting this or participating in this pilot project, people would be able to ride kick scooters on that trail. But the CRD still has to pass a bylaw to allow electric kick scooters on the off-road portions of the trail. So if, for example, CRD amended their bylaw and Sydney did not participate in this, technically electric kick scooters would have to not ride on Lochside Drive, but they may be able to ride on other parts of CRD's trail network.
Thank you. That is now clear to me. And if I may, through to you, Mayor, as the CRD Director, is this a conversation that has come forward or is expected to?
I have to be honest in that we had a very long agenda last meeting, and we had, I think, 20 items on the consent part of the agenda, and I can't recall at a glance if that was a consent item. So I'm sorry, I don't know the answer to that. But Ms. Clary does and staff do participate on a joint transportation committee, and we actually receive the minutes of their reports at our transportation committee meetings. And so Ms. Clary would have the most recent information.
So I would suggest respectfully to the CRD that it would be a much more seamless undertaking if they were indeed to support travel of that nature. But I really like this and I support it. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor O'Keefe.
Thank you. A question through you to staff. I have no idea what these look like or how big they are, but if they're kind of like bikes with more power and more wheels, can they be parked at our bike racks, or would we have to make special provision to allow for that?
Through to Councillor O'Keefe, I believe they could be, but I think people that carry them around more likely. I'm not sure actually if they have like a locking mechanism. They're just like normal kids' scooters, like that they ride with one foot, but then they have a motor on them as well. So I don't own one of these things, so I don't know if they have a locking mechanism attached to them.
Okay, thanks. I guess just a suggestion, maybe something to think about. If, the next item is we're looking at bike racks and we have a program to put them around, so whether that's something we might want to consider.
Mr. Mayor?
No, absolutely.
Yeah.
I'll turn to Mr. Humble.
Yeah, anecdotally, I saw a woman actually lock up her electric scooter at Panorama this morning at one of the bike racks. So looks like they can.
Okay. And another one, if I may, is it something where we might anticipate we want to provide outlets for these to be charged? Is that something that's needed or that we should be considering as well?
Through to Councillor O'Keefe, I think similar to what we've said about electric bicycles is people can take, more often they can charge them at home. Even if the battery dies, they can still use them. So although we could, and there are outlets around town that if someone were in a pinch, they could plug into, I don't think we necessarily need to go install an outlet specifically for this use.
Okay, great, thank you for that.
Thanks, Councillor O'Keefe. Councillor Duck,
Prepared to move the recommendation.
please.
The recommendation, I so move that the council consents to the provincial electrical kick scooter pilot project taking place within the town of Sydney.
Second?
It's moved and seconded. I'll turn to the mover and seconder. Any further discussions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Councillor Gurnett.
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I have seen a few because they usually whiz by me on my walks. So I initially had a couple of inklings of concern just because if you're coming up behind you, you can catch you a little off guard. But for me, the thing that stands out in the staff report is the fact that the RCMP are supportive of it. And for me, that's all I need to hear. And so I'll be okay with it. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Duck.
Yeah, just to add to that, they're on our streets already, and it's just a way in which we can manage it better. And it is a form of alternative transportation, and you see them regularly. I saw one today going down 5th. So, yeah, I think this is a great thing to be a part of. Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I call the question. All in favor? And that motion carries unanimous. Thank you, staff, for bringing that forward. And we're now going to item 13C, which is a bike rack request at 2520 Bevan Avenue. And I'll turn to Ms. Clary again to introduce, or to Mr. Demare.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. This report brings forward a request from Gray's Cafe, located at 2520 Bevan Avenue, to install a bike rack on the town's boulevard. The request for the rack was made under the town's bike rack cost share policy, which supports the installation of bike racks on town property through cost sharing with interested businesses. The request was made for a bike rack that accommodate multiple bikes. Due to the limited sidewalk space to accommodate a multi-spaced rack, the proposal is to place the bike rack within the fronting parking bay. The installation would be similar to the on-street bike rack currently installed on Beacon Avenue near 3rd Street. It's also noted that this applicant received support from their Building Strata Council, as well as a neighboring business, to install the bike rack in the parking bay. As the bike rack placement is within the parking bay, staff have brought forward this application for council's consideration and approval. This report also speaks to the on-street bike rack on Beacon Avenue near 3rd Street, which was originally installed as a pilot project in 2021 and has been installed seasonally each year. This bike parking facility has been well utilized, and staff are recommending this installation be left in place year-round, increasing the town's infrastructure supporting active transportation. And I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Demare. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. Seeing none, because it's these two motions are referring to different locations, if we could move them separately, I'd look for a mover to the first. Councillor Duck.
The recommendation, I so move that Gray's Cafe application under the bike rack cost share policy to install a multi-space bike rack within the parking bay fronting 2520 Bevan Avenue be approved.
Second?
I'll take Councillor O'Keefe on that. Any discussion? Call the question. All in favor? The motion carries unanimous. And the second recommendation, Councillor Duck.
And the recommendation, I so move that the on-street bike rack fronting 2473 Beacon Avenue remain in place as a year-round bike parking facility.
Second?
And we have Councillor Duncan. Any discussion?
I was hoping to, make an amendment if I could, or is it, do you want me to wait till he motivates?
Sorry, I'll turn to the mover and seconder, and then if you wish to comment.
Okay, just to say that I'm happy to see these. I've used them on multiple purposes. I also reflect on the staff's observation they're getting highly used. It is a way in which we can accommodate more active transportation in our town, and I think it's a nice, safe way to park and less clutter on the sidewalk. If you've ever been to Gray's, which I have, I'm parking my bike, a door in front, and it's hard to find a spot. So it's a great thing to see. Thank you.
Thank you. Seconder?
Yeah, I mean, nothing to add, that mostly that we have a lot of bike traffic that comes in now that we are running into the problem of not having enough bike parking space, and we've had it before, and people were just kind of leaning bikes against the wall. But so it's good to see us finally dedicating space, which will probably draw even more mode share shift, so we'll see how that goes. Yeah, I'm thankful these businesses are able to bring this forward. Thanks.
Thank you. Councillor Garnett.
Yeah, if I just was hoping to make an amendment, we're still speaking to number 2, right? Second recommendation?
We're on the second recommendation,
so I
if you wish
thought,
to
okay.
amend.
Yeah, just want to amend, if we could send some kind of a notification to the businesses that front that parking space, because it's going to permanent, and it's been semi-permanent, so they'll probably wonder why it's not being removed, and it would probably just head off any questions or if anybody has any concerns. Thank you.
Okay, so the motion is that on-street bike rack fronting remain in place as a year-round bike parking facility, and notice be sent to adjacent businesses.
I see that as a friendly amendment.
Okay, I'm looking to the mover and seconder. They accept it as a friendly amendment. Thank you, Councillor Garnett. Any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Motion carries unanimous. Thank you. We've been through the Torquemasters request as item 13D, so we're on to item 13E, which is the 2023 financial statements. I'll turn to staff for an introduction. Mr. Hissick or Ms. Chen? Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mr. Mayor. As required by the community charter, we're looking to obtain council's acceptance of the town's 2023 financial statements tonight. The various components of the financial statements, as well as the year's results, are discussed in our staff report. One noteworthy change to the financial statement this year is the adoption of the asset retirement obligation. It's one of the more complex new accounting standards we've adopted in recent years. As a reminder, our financial statements serve a different purpose than our budget variance report, which will be considered next. The financial statements are prepared in accordance to national standards and measure resources coming into and going out of the town, whereas the budget variance report focus on performance relative to approved budget. I'll also acknowledge that local government financial statements are different from traditional private sector statements and may be a little bit difficult to interpret for those who are not familiar with them. More information about the statements and more context around them will be provided in the management discussion and analysis section of the annual report, which I encourage everyone to review when they're available in June. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Ms. Chen. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. Councillor Novak.
I'm prepared to move the recommendation.
Please go ahead.
The recommendation, I move that council accept the town's financial statements for the year ended December 31st, 2023.
Second.
We have a mover and seconder. I'll turn to the mover and seconder.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I've reviewed the statements. I'm very happy with the with staff's discussion on these statements along with the notes, and I think they've done a very good job of representing our financial position for the year, so I'm happy to accept them as presented.
Thank you. The seconder? Any further comment? I just want to thank staff. We received an 8-page report on the financial statements, and I found it very interesting information. In particular, I was pleased to see that while we have a total debt balance, and it decreased substantially due to principal repayments, the average interest rate of current outstanding debt is 2.41%, with rates of individual debt issues ranging from 1.28 to 3.39%. So I think that's very positive, particularly in the economic climate we've been faced with over the last couple of years. But many other, lots of other helpful information in the report. And I think the fact that there weren't a lot of questions tonight was many of our questions were likely answered in the 8-page report. So thank you. Seeing no further discussion, I'll call a question. All in favor? That motion carries unanimous. And we're now moving to the 2023 year-end financial results, and I'll turn back to staff for an introduction.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And on to part 2 of our year-end reports. And the purpose of this one is to provide information on our 2023 operating results versus the approved budget. On the operating side, there are fewer notes than you're accustomed to seeing at the semi-annual and 3-quarter marks, because many of the mid-year fluctuations are no longer applicable. The bottom line for general operating is that we incurred a deficit, but only about half of what we had budgeted to take from prior year surplus to balance last year's results. So we had budgeted for up to 478,000 and only 247,000 was required. The main contributing factors to being in a deficit position included overages in the Parks Department due to a long growing and maintenance season, as well as our building permit revenues being considerably down. So, as you heard through the budget process, our general operating surplus is now below the policy minimum, and we've committed to a review prior to next year's budget. The water utility, we generated a small surplus, just further evidence that the new rate structure is working. The sewer utility incurred a deficit, but it was smaller than we expected. So the water surplus remains within policy limits, while the sewer has fallen slightly below. And as you've been hearing, our sewer rates review is overdue, and we really hope to address it later this year, depending on being able to get fully staffed up. On the capital side, the projects have been reorganized for year-end reporting. We've grouped them into project categories that better describe the outcome rather than repeating many of the messages that you've heard throughout the two previous reports. In total, out of 98 total projects, 59 of them had activity, which is roughly 60%. So the bottom line on this report differs from what's reported on the financial statements. You'll see that we incurred an operating variance of a $420,000 deficit overall, whereas on the financial statements, you'll see a surplus of 9.2 million. So that's where the disconnect is between the two in terms of what they are for and how they represent our results. With that, I'll open it up to any questions.
Thank you, Mr. Hisik. I'll turn to colleagues if there are any questions. Seeing none, I would look for a mover. Councillor Gurnett, or a question?
Just a comment, if I may, Mayor. I just would like to thank the two senior staff members here today and everyone else who helps work on this. I'm very appreciative of this document as it comes out through all the quarters and the end of the year. It's very helpful to understand just the actual capacity of what our staff accomplishes in a year. And when I was looking through the documents on the carryover, I actually acknowledged some of the ones in here that have actually already been done in 2024 and have been done for a little bit of time. So, I mean, it never ceases to amaze me how much we actually get done in a year and how we have this massive vision of what we want to do, but we still get quite a bit accomplished. And it's a real kudos to everybody in every department at what they lay out for their staff, and just great appreciation. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor. And do I have a member to move the recommendation? Oh, it's for information. My apologies. Thank you again to staff, and we're turning to item 13G, which is the monthly building report. This is for information only. I would turn to colleagues if there are any comments or questions. Seeing none, we have no correspondence under number 14 this evening. We have four items of correspondence for information. We're receiving those on our agenda and don't require a motion. I'll turn to number 17, which is a motion to go on camera. Councillor Gurnett.
Thank you, Mayor. I'll move that it is in the opinion of council that the public interest requires that persons other than members of the council and officers be excluded from the meeting to consider confidential matters regarding personal information about an identifiable individual who holds or is being considered for a position appointed by the municipality pursuant to section 90.1A of the community charter, and that council continue the meeting in closed session.
It's moved and seconded. All in favor? Motion carries, and a motion mover and seconder to adjourn. Moved by Councillor Duck, seconded by Councillor Gurnett. All in favor? We are adjourned. I'll call a recess for 5 minutes before our